Good afternoon. I'm Dee Childers with Life Changes Elder Care Consulting and the Vice President of Community Education for Learn, Lifelong Education and Aging Resource Network. And we're here today to talk about the art of long-term care. Our content today is provided for general informational purposes only and is not to be considered legal, financial, or health advice. So please consult with your professionals before taking action based on this information. Our sponsors today are Oasis Senior Advisors, who provide personal senior living assistance with trusted local advisors, and A Mind for All Seasons, leading the revolution in brain individuals with their comprehensive approach to brain health and healing. And I am so pleased to introduce our speaker today, Don Azevedo with New York Life Insurance Company. And Don is a father, husband, grandpa, and financial advisor for all seasons of life with New York Life. He's nearly Don, native Idaho, moving here in 1979, raising all 5 of his children and in Idaho. He really either loves Idaho or does not like to move. I'm pretty sure it's you love Idaho, isn't it, Don?
Absolutely.
His focus today is in the area of long-term care planning, a very, very, very important topic. And here to shed some light on what this means to you and your families and loved ones is Don Azevedo.
Okay, well, welcome. And choice, options, and control. We'll get into what that means as we go along. Everybody has a long-term care plan. It just might not be the one that you would design if you were doing it on purpose. And there's a 70% chance, if we're a married couple, that there's going to be a long-term care event in our future. Those are not great odds. So let's see if I can make this work. Oh, there's my contact information. If I don't get your question answered today, we can definitely do it at some other time, but feel free to chime in whenever. Okay, so I'm using New York Life as the backbone of my presentation, just so I don't have to create everything, and also I don't have to rerun it through compliance because it has already been done for me. But 20, 30 years ago, people really didn't consider long-term care because, for one, we weren't living 25 to 30 years in retirement. And, the thought of the day was, well, I'll just have my kids take care of me. So there's 5 pillars for healthy, joyful aging. Your health is probably your biggest source of wealth. Of course, family. We all like to have our family around us. And it's good to have social interactions. Financial security, of course, and peace of mind. All 5 of those things can be affected by a long-term care event. So, as we mentioned before, we want to maintain control over our choices, our options. So why create a long-term care strategy? Because my kids will take care of me, right? Well, again, to take control over your care. So where do you want care? Who do you want to be your care provider? Do we want our family members to be our caregiver or our care provider? Most people, when you talk about where do you want to have care, everybody wants to stay at home as long as possible. That's where we're most comfortable. That's where lots of our memories are. We want to protect our retirement. The biggest drawdown on retirement is a long-term care event. And protect your family, maybe not directly, but indirectly. If someone else is taking care of you, then chances are they're being affected, either their work or their own family. They're taking away time for that. It's not that they don't love you, but it does take a toll. It's not a month or 2 event. So what is long-term care, you might ask? Because, Medicare will cover that, right? Well, not exactly. So the definition of an ADL, you'll hear that term, it's an activity of daily living. So it's not a medical thing, but it's things we still need help with. Bathing, eating, continence, getting in and out of chairs and beds, getting help dressing, restroom activities. Those are things that Medicare does not cover. So we all know it's a normal part of aging. Excuse me for a second, I got to get some water. There we go. And here's a little known fact, unless you work in the Medicare space. So if you ever get admitted to a hospital, or sent to a hospital for something and you get treated, you're going to be there for a few days. Make sure they admit you. If they don't admit you, then that first 3 days does not help qualify you for Medicare to pay for the next 20 days of rehab or long-term care. So we had an agent in our office that happened to. You'd think he would be on top of it. His mom was in the hospital for 4 days, but she was in a room that had a curtain, not a wall, and she was never technically admitted. And then they were on the hook for all that long-term care for the first 20 days. Well, make sure they admit you. Here's that statistic I spoke about earlier. Who's going to need long-term care? Probably most of us. Oh. I don't think there's anything I haven't really covered there. So do any of you have this worksheet in front of you? Or were you able to download it? If not, just get a sheet of paper and make 4 squares on it. And then you can keep notes for yourself as we walk through this process. We're going to talk about the who. Who's your who person? Where do you want care? What are your options? How much does it cost? What kind of solutions are available? So hopefully you've got that notepad in front of you. So who is your who person? Who would be in charge of your care if you needed it? Well, write that name down. You have a name in mind. So the next question I have for you is, do they know that? Have you had that conversation with them to say, hey, I would want you to be my long-term care giver or manager. Are you okay with that? A lot of times, the best time to have that conversation is well before you need care, so that it can be a little unemotive, and it will also, you have time and more options. If it's a crisis situation, you usually have very few options. So we talked about earlier, are they going to be your caregiver or your care manager? Or do you want to hire somebody to perform those roles? Then how would all of those people that care about you be impacted? These are some pretty startling statistics. The percentage of caregivers who work while they're giving care to someone else. 61%, us baby boomer sandwich generation, we're probably in that statistic. How many caregivers have experienced at least one financial impact? Almost half of us. And then 78% of us incur out-of-pocket expenses, either directly or indirectly. So if you can't work full-time anymore, that can be indirectly, or mom and dad need some of this and some of that. And of course, we're always running to the store to get that for them. Average caregiver is 49.4. Heck, that's almost old enough to be getting care. Another statistic, don't you just love statistics? Did you know that I think it's 44% of people in long-term care are below the age of 65. Because a lot of them aren't, like you got injured. There's all kinds of other diseases, like memory care is one of those. Average time caregivers are spending in care, 23. That's like having another half-time job. So now you're working 63 hours a week instead of 40. And then, your employer could be impacted. And indirectly, you'll be impacted. Hey, how come you keep coming in late? So now we're moving on to the top right-hand box. Where would you like care? Here's your choices, basically. At home's pretty obvious. There's what they call adult daycare. I really don't like that term, but I haven't come up with something better. There's your community. And then there's assisted living. Most people think of long-term care as, the nursing home. Usually we're not in the nursing home that long. It's a progression. As first you need a little care, then you need maybe a little more. And then maybe you just need somebody to keep an eye on you, or the cost of having care at home is equal to or greater than what it's going to cost in an assisted living facility. So maybe it's time to get rid of all the home expenses and let somebody else cut the grass and fix the roof and all that stuff. And then, of course, when your care becomes acute, then that's when skilled nursing becomes an issue and a resource. So 90% of people receiving long-term care today are at home or in a community setting. Not surprising, really, to me, because I'd want to stay home as long as possible. Okay, so how are we doing on our worksheets? Everybody put down where you'd want care, or you can put them in rank order, since we'll all be in that kind of progression. Any questions so far? I don't see any, so I will keep
Yeah, if
moving.
anyone who puts a question in the chat, I'll monitor for you.
Okay, good.
Don?
Because I closed that window so I can have the
Yep.
full screen to look at.
No worries, I'll watch it for you.
All right, thanks, Dara. Appreciate it. Oh, what did I do? Okay, the financial part of long-term care, that's the reality of it. Like most things, it's not free. How much does it cost? Well, here's just some examples of the national averages. I didn't fill in the local rates, but I can tell you what they are. So for a home health care, $25 to $30 an hour is our local rate, if you can find somebody. And the other thing is I've been told by most of those caregivers that there's a 4-hour minimum. So if you had somebody coming in 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, and you were helping out on the weekends, that's going to be, so $100 a day. That's 26,000 at 4 hours. So at 8 hours a day. So now it's up to 52,000, which is around $3,000 to $4,000 a month, if you could find a place that would take you in an assisted living. You can see it's 4,800. I think in Idaho it's 4,200 to 5,000 currently, and with our inflation, it's continuing to rise. And for nursing home in Idaho, it's over $100,000 a year. It's round the clock skilled nursing.
So Don, we do have a question in the chat. And for you, there might be others on the phone too. Are there continuing care retirement communities, lifestyle communities in the Treasure Valley? So it might be good to both answer the question and define that. And I'm not sure if Dee might want to take that question if you don't want to.
Well, I could take it, but I bet Dee would have a better answer. I know
Oh,
of
she
a
says
few
she's
places.
constantly dropping. Mary Holden might also know.
Okay, well then I'll take it.
Well,
So you do need a continuum of care.
okay, you
So
go ahead, Don.
I know there's one over on Allenbaugh. I think it's called Garden View Suites. And so they have like the full gambit as you progress. They have a assisted living, but it's more like, you know, come and go as you can, as you please. They provide meals and housekeeping, but you can cook if you want. You know, it's kind of like an apartment. And then as you need care, they can move you to the other side of the facility where you need maybe some medical assistance or some ADL assistance. And then skilled nursing, usually that's a specialized place.
So Don, can I jump in?
Absolutely. Please save me.
Valley View is actually life is no longer a CCRC, and they never really set themselves up for that way. But the one that is actually the only true CCRC that we have in the Valley is all right, help me out there.
Terraces?
We have a client situation going on, so I apologize. It's someone from the terraces. But the Valley View just split their life care center for skilled nursing about 5 years ago. So that's owned by one company. The independent assisted living is owned by, is similar, but it's just those two levels, and they don't have a memory care. So the one that has independent living, assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing is the terraces off of Worms. You can buy in and they will ensure that you have care regardless of the level of care that you need. Touchmark on this side of, on the west side of town comes very close to a CCRC, and you can buy in. The only problem is they do outsource their nursing home care because they did not build a nursing home. So other than that, you have places that will do assisted living and memory care, maybe independent care, but the only one that's truly associated with skilled nursing is the terraces.
Ah, so it's even more rare than I thought.
It is rare. And the other thing I just like to jump in and add for you as you're talking about these minimums, people go, oh, 4,400 is not bad. What's important to understand about that number, or 4,800, is that's just room and board. So your meals, your housekeeping, your laundry, your activities, that has nothing to do with care. The level of care that you need is added to the top of that amount. And that's why you see skilled nursing being so much higher. Their care is already added in.
Right. Yeah, that's a very, very good point. So as you're designing a plan for you, we'll get into where you can find out what the costs are in Idaho, and then you can go, or maybe you don't want to retire in Idaho. We have a resource that you can put in most cities in all states and get you a ballpark of what does it cost in that state currently. Now, just keep in mind that
we're still more reasonable than many.
Oh, absolutely. Until just the last year, inflation wasn't that big of a problem, but as everyone knows now, that 20 years from now, typically things cost double every 20 years. So having an inflation protection is also good. Let's keep moving forward, or I don't want to get bogged down here. Okay. Now what happened? There we go. All right. Well, we don't care about those places. All right. So to find the cost of long-term care, you can either QR code this or scan this QR code, or you can go to newyorklife.com/LTC costs, and you'll get a screen that looks just like that example above. And then you can play with it. But again, those are the minimums, not the maximum. It's an average. But it does at least give you an idea. Frequently, people will call me and want to know about long-term care, and they just want a quote. I go, okay, so what does your plan look like? And so that's where the conversation begins. All right, so the how. So if you did have a long-term care event, how would you pay for care? So a lot of times what I'll do here is I'll have people draw a circle in that how window or quadrant. And I'll say, make it into a pie. You can have 4 slices or 6 or 8, whatever works for you, and start putting your assets in there. So you have your home, maybe you have a 401k, maybe you have some savings, maybe you have stocks, bonds, mutual funds, maybe you have real estate, whatever those assets are. Put one of those in each slice of the pie. And then on the right-hand side of that circle at about 3 o'clock, put 100%. So that's how many assets that you have. And so that's 100% of them. Then on the other opposing side, about 9 o'clock, write 0%. And so then the next question is, which asset are you going to liquidate to pay for in the event of a long-term care event? So if you don't have a plan, that 0% you have on 9 o'clock, you've just put down 100%, because if you don't, you're going to end up spending down some of those assets. So if you haven't allocated something, you've allocated everything. There's also some tax considerations. If those are qualified assets that you have that you're liquidating to pay for long-term care, even if you could, oh, I have plenty, I'm fine. Well, for every dollar of care that you need, you're going to have to spend $1 plus whatever the tax rate is to get $1's worth of care. So there's other strategies you could use to leverage that money so that you get way more benefit for a lot less dollars. But we'll get into that in a minute. And if you currently have a business, you can pay for long-term care through your business, unlike life insurance, which you cannot. So it depends on your age, but you can fully deduct your long-term care premiums while you're working through your business. So that's really powerful. Not only does it lower your adjusted gross income, but you get a tax-free long-term care benefit, and you get a lot more purchasing power for your dollar. So that may or may not work for you, but my advice is to get educated. Get educated now while you don't need it. Because the most critical thing is not everyone qualifies for long-term care. That's another dirty little secret. You have to be healthy enough to get it. And so the younger you are and the healthier you are, the better the rate is going to be. And you lock that in where, when people get in 65 and above, the decline rate is probably 50% is what I'm seeing. So then we have to come up with some other kind of strategy. So what is your ideal long-term care solution? Oh, remember we talked about the government programs. So we talked a little bit about Medicare. So I'll just touch on that quickly. Again, make sure if you go to the hospital, you get admitted for 3 days. Second, if you are in a rehab situation, so you have to be able to be getting better, they'll pay for the first 20 days of care. For day 21 to 100, you'll pay like $180 a day for care, and they'll pay the rest of it, but you have to be getting better. The minute your doctor says, well, that's as good as they're going to get, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay there, and they're not going to pay for it. Other options we talked about, out of pocket, I can finance my own. And then insurance. So I like to think of insurance as risk management. And I'm not here as an advocate for New York Life today. I'm just here as an educational provider. They just happen to have really good materials. Like, car insurance, if you, other than you, it's a law that you have to have car insurance. You could just get, liability and cover the rest. Or you could get, $1,000 deductible, or you could get a $500 deductible, or $100 deductible. It all depends how much cost sharing you want to do. What's the right answer? Well, that all depends on your situation. But get the facts, find out what your options are. So you have choices, options figured out long before you're going to need it. Okay. Oh, wait, I'll go back one slide. So Medicaid, Medicaid will take care of me. Maybe. First of all, you have to impoverish yourself. So you've got to spend down all of your assets, and you can't use I'll just transfer all my assets to one of my kids or my relatives, and then I'll apply for Medicaid. Well, if you do that at least 5 years ago, that might work. But if you do that any time inside of that 5 years, they have a 5-year look back. So they'll make you spend down the equivalent of whatever it is you were trying to hide. And then the other not fun fact about Medicaid, not care, Medicaid is once you apply and you get approved, well, they will put you in a facility within a 50-mile radius that has an open bed, and not all assisted living facilities take Medicaid patients. So which brings me to the next slide. What's going on in the state of Washington? So this is like the canary in the coal mine. Medicaid is, running out of money. Well, why? Because there's 10,000 baby boomers retiring every day. So that's more and more people that are getting to be my age and older, that there's a 70% chance they're going to need long-term care. So there's just more demand than there is funds to fund it. So like it or not, good, bad, at least Washington is trying to do something about it rather than, well, I hope it works out. They've instituted a payroll tax, 58 cents for every $100 you make. And it's not a giant sum of money. So if you made $100,000, it'd be $580 a year. But the downside of it is it only covers $100 a day for 1 year of coverage. You have to live in the state of Washington. You have to have put into it for 3 of the last 6 years, or for 10 years if you're younger than that. And it's only a $36,000 benefit. Well, remember we did that calculation on the in-home care for 4 hours a day, and it was like 26,000. So that's probably not going to cut the mustard. Oh, and you also have to live in the state of Washington in order to take advantage of that great benefit. So they're making a few adjustments to it. They had an opt-in period or opt-out period. So if you got your own policy, you could opt out of the Washington plan, avoid the payroll tax. So I did really well with the state of Washington last year, writing policies, because nobody likes to pay taxes. Plus, it's just not that good of a deal. But for people that don't have any other plan, for lower income people, it's probably not that bad. At least you'll have some coverage during the first year, and at least they're trying to solve the problem. So is this the last state that's going to do this? Probably not. So next on deck is California, Minnesota, Michigan, Illinois, Nevada, and the US Senate is taking this up. California is the closest. So in July of 2023, so a little over a year from now, they're going to roll out their version of a CARES fund. And right now, instead of 58 cents, they think the employee is going to pay 66 cents and the employer is going to pay 33 cents. So it's nearly $1 for for every $100 you make. So you can see the direction it's going. Of course, things cost more in California. They're probably not going to have a advertised opt-out period. They're just going to implement it. And if you don't have a policy on that date, well, then if you're an employer or an employee, you're going to be paying that in perpetuity until you stop working. Washington has an exemption for employers, but California's thinking they're not going to have that exemption. Everybody needs to pay into it, which is kind of the whole point of the tax. Minnesota's not far behind, or Michigan or Illinois. Nevada's probably another year behind all of them. So the message here is, again, keep control of your options, your choices, and maybe start looking at what a plan would look like for you sooner than later. Maybe the state plan is a good plan for you. When will Idaho do this? Well, lived since almost a native in Idaho. We rank 49th or 50th in most kind of social programs. So I would expect we'll be one of the last states to adopt it, but who knows? But pay attention to the legislature every year to make sure you know what's going on. So you can put yourself in a position that's the best position for you. Okay, I think we already covered that. And so for those of you who like statistics.
Actually, I've got a note or question from Garth, Don. Idaho has aggressive recovery. So Garth, do you want to hum a few bars on that, or?
Well, estate recovery. So when both spouses are gone, Medicaid's first in line to get what's left.
Yep.
Yeah. So what that means is if if one of you are in care and the other's still at home, you got a car, you have a couple thousand in assets. Well, if the amount that Medicaid paid exceeded what you're eligible for, and then the spouse dies, they will make your heirs sell the home and then settle up. They'll put a lien on your house or whatever other assets you might have. So you don't just get to get away with it. And so that is pretty aggressive, Garth, definitely. Okay, so what about health insurance? Health insurance is for sick people or people that need medical intervention. It's not for ADLs, those activities of daily living. So that's not an option. Medicare is not an option. Again, that's health insurance. So how are you going to pay for it? There's basically three ways you can do it. Out of your income, either while you're working or your retirement income. Qualified assets, so those are like tax deferred assets like a 401k, an IRA, a pension, not a Roth. And personal savings, your nest egg. So they all come with impacts. Could impact your lifestyle. Not going to get it to do as much traveling as you'd hoped, or you're spending down qualified assets. There's tax consequences. Anybody's still saving for retirement and you're not utilizing a Roth, I would ask why, unless you're above the limits, because it's tax-free growth. And then, does anybody think they know what the tax rate's going to be when they retire? Because I have no idea. My assumption is it's going to be higher since we have big bills to pay for. All right, so what do we offer? We have what most people, there's I think my last count was there's down to 9 providers for long-term care protection. So we have, traditional long-term care, which a lot of companies do. Mass Mutual just got out of the business. So you got Northwest Mutual, you got Thrivent, you got Mutual of Omaha. You got CalPERS, which is actually going bankrupt. That's for the state of California. There's not a whole lot. So you can either get a traditional
Okay,
kind of.
I think the next one is already on here. I think.
What's that?
I think somebody was not on mute, but intended to be. I think you're good now.
Okay. Let's go. What? What did I say? So there's traditional long-term care insurances. It's like, auto insurance, homeowners insurance. You pay a premium, you go on care, you stop paying a premium. It's based on how much coverage do I want? Do I want $100 a day, $150 a day, $200 a day? Or you can convert that to monthly, $3,000 a month, $4,000 a month, $5,000, up to, I think, $10,000 a month you can get. You can apply together, you can apply separately. Usually there's a discount for couples. Not a lot of companies, but New York Life is one of them. We actually start decreasing your premium in either year 3 or year 11 in the form of a dividend. Then the other option is a hybrid. It's combination life insurance and long-term care. So that's attractive to some folks because you can get a return of premium option, either 80% or 100%. You could also pay it off in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, at age 65, 15 years. So some people like that. It has built-in inflation protection. Any of these, you can add inflation or not inflation. So do you want to get, one thing to consider is, okay, so do I want to get a bigger policy right from the beginning? And actually the premium's a little less than if you put an inflation rider on it. But you don't have to wait 15 years for it to double. If you have a long-term care event, say 5 years down the road, well, maybe that strategy isn't going to work. But again, it's something that you got to weigh out for yourself individually. The long-term care with the life insurance, again, some people like that. Return of premium. We have less than 1% of the people actually utilize the return of premium, but there's just, something about, well, what if I don't use it? I want to get my money back. Well, we don't get our money back if we don't get in a car wreck, and we don't get our money back if our house doesn't burn down either. Again, risk management. How do you want to do it? So I think I summarized that. Monthly or annual. Again, there's some tax deductibility. So things to keep in mind. All of our plans, you can have care wherever you want. At home, in a facility, combination of thereof. We include a care planning service, so a concierge, so we can partner with your providers and make sure you're getting the best care possible at the best deal possible. We also include in-home support stuff. So say you need oxygen unit, or you need a ramp built, or something to, grab bars in the shower. We help with that. And of course, one of your biggest decisions is, do I want inflation protection or not? Can I afford inflation protection or not? And whether it's New York Life or whoever, the same questions apply. Is the plan you're trying to get signed up for, does it include these kinds of things, and these amenities? To me, they're not amenities. These are things you got to have. Hopefully you never need them, but I think that's pretty well understood. I mean,
so
I think
a question from Garth, if you want me to put it in here.
Sure.
He says reimbursement only, or is there an indemnity option?
Okay, so for we have like what's called a MyCare plan. So it's an 80-20 plan. We pay 80% up to the full benefit amount, and you pay the other 20%. So for people that, want to hedge their bets that they might not need care, but they have the wherewithal to pay for it if they could, that's a good option. That is reimbursement. The same with secure care, that is reimbursement. Now, there is a chronic care rider on a whole life insurance contract that is indemnity, where once you need help with your ADLs, say you had a $100,000 policy, you could make 90,000 of it available. And once you go on care, we either send you $1,800 or $3,600 a month, or that's based on a 90,000 pool of money, or you can make it bigger. So that would be in indemnity. We just send you a check. So we have both kinds, country and Western. So you probably know from your own experience that people do a lot better once they get home than in most situations than if they stay in the hospital, just because you're more comfortable, relaxed, it's familiar, you know, you're at home. We covered that. Okay, so what triggers when we or anybody else starts paying you benefits? You need help with 2 of your activities of daily living. So there's a acronym that you can write down if it's too hard to remember that stuff. It's called DEBT, DEBT. So D for dressing, E for eating, B for bathing, T for transferring, T for toileting, C for continence, if that's helpful. Debt TC. So also there's, in most policies, there's a 90-day waiting period. With our secure care plan, if you have a care coordinator, that's reduced to 20 days. And that's reduced to 20 days for you and your spouse. So that's another consideration to ask questions about, is what is your waiting period? And is it a hard, fast 90 days? Or is it, you know, contingent upon having a care coordinator or something like that? Because you're going to have to fund your care for the first 90 days. So if it's $5,000 a month, you're going to have to come up with the first $15,000, or at least have to pay those bills for the first $15,000 or 90 days. All right, then we just have some basic examples. So for a 55-year-old male, and oh, by the way, unlike life insurance where females cost less than males, males cost less than females in the long-term care space. Why is that, you might ask? You probably already know the answer. Because females live longer, so there's a higher likelihood that they're going to need care. Where, you know, us guys, we just check out. So we're not as much of a chronic care risk, we're just a life risk. So here's some examples of, you know, $143 a month. That sounds like a lot, but so if you multiplied 143 times 12, that's $1,700 a year. Oh, that sounds like a lot of money, Don. Well, 1 month, remember, 1 month of assisted living is between $4,000 and $5,000 plus expenses. So you're paying like a third the cost of 1 month's stay in assisted living for $1,700. That sounds like some pretty good leverage for your money. So again, it doesn't matter what insurance company you use, but you know, look for the best value for you. Another thing to consider is, do you have a family history of memory care? Because that's one of the cruelest things out there as far as I'm concerned. You know, you could be perfectly healthy otherwise and live 10 years, but you're not able to actively participate and need care. It's just a cruel disease. So difference between a female and a male. So the premium went from 143 to 196. Or if you had a male $100,000 one-time payment, you've got $500,000 in coverage and $173,000 death benefit, where a female for the same money little bit less in coverage, not quite a $500,000, and another 25,000 less in life insurance. If you did exhaust your combo care, there's still a 10% residual benefit, at least with our plan, for final expenses, even if you completely deplete your money pool.
So Don, question for you.
Yes.
What is the likelihood of being underwritten at, various ages? So, given that you said earlier that, you have to be healthy enough to qualify for the insurance, what percentage luck,
Well,
right?
It's well, it's not luck. It's based on your health. So here's some
Right.
examples. So first of all, they're going to say, well, how tall are you and how much do you weigh? So depending on where you fall in the old BMI table, you could get a debit point. So you can have 3 debit points and still be preferred or best rate.
Mm-hmm.
So some disqualifiers are, if you already need help with your activities of daily living, well, you're kind of already in a chronic situation. If you were on insulin for diabetes, that's chronic. If you have Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, had a heart attack in the last 6 months, how long, if you had cancer, even if you've been in remission and there's no trace of it, depending on the type of cancer, within 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, you could be eligible again. Because if you're cured, then it's not a chronic thing. You may die from it, but it's not a chronic thing. Then there's medications. A lot of folks are on medications these days. So depending on the medication and what the underlying condition is for, you're going to get 1 debit point for each medication. Lots of people are on high blood pressure meds, statins. Those really aren't disqualifiers, but it's things that are like kidney dialysis. If you have kidney problems, that's probably a disqualifier. So we have a little app that you can run through, and I'm sure other companies do, but we have an app where I can run you through a pre-screen, and we'll know in 5 minutes where we think you're going to come in at, rather than go through the whole underwriting process. Does that kind of give you an idea, Dara?
Yeah, I guess, is there any industry information that indicates, what percentage of people who apply or would like to apply would get underwritten at various ages, right? I think the thing I worry about with what I see is, people are realizing they need this when they're already at risk of being eligible. And so trying to figure out how to they just need to talk to an agent, but it's really a challenge. There's a lot of people who really aren't eligible anymore.
Right. So then, you're looking at, well, what other asset could we designate for long-term care and create a financial instrument that, should we need it, it'll have a payment schedule that we can draw from. And in the meantime, it'll continue to grow.
So an annuity or something like that,
Yeah,
or what would you?
An annuity is one of the best vehicles out there. But if you're still healthy, it's really, if you're over 50 and you're still healthy, it's really time to at least have a conversation with a person that's in the long-term care space to find out where you sit, especially if you have some family history. You want to make sure that you get that application submitted before it shows up on a medical record somewhere. So most companies don't require you to go get a medical exam. They just say, have you been to see a doctor in the last 5 years? So we utilize your medical record. So if there's anything in there, we're going to find it. So don't let those things get on your medical history. I mean, if you need care, you need care, but that's how the game works, right? So I have a list that I could send folks, if that would be helpful, to kind of give you an idea of, you are likely uninsurable if.
Yeah, actually, if you have that, we could add it as a handout perhaps, and that way it would be accessible?
Yes, I will. I'll do the secure care one
Okay,
because I think that's, like middle of the road. And they,
Sure.
no matter whether it's my care, secure care, whatever care people call it, these are going to be the ones that they're monitoring. AIDS, Alzheimer's, cerebral palsy, chronic brain syndrome, liver, memory loss, cirrhosis of the liver, kidneys, lupus, spina bifida. These are all serious things. So I'll send that out and you can get it up on the website. Not a problem.
that'd be great. I think that'll help people get an idea of eligibility.
Yeah, so you can see why I'm a little flippant when people call me and go, well, yeah, I'd like to learn about long-term care. How much is it going to cost? I go, well, that depends. How old are you? Male, female? How big of a benefit do you want? How long do you want the benefit to last? Do you have any underlying health conditions, et cetera, et cetera? It's a conversation that needs to take place. So we can flush this out and boil it down to, okay, now we know what a care plan would look like for you. Now we can, the pricing, it's the easy part. So we talked about dividends with our secure care in the 11th year. We actually start reducing your premium. That's another question we get a lot is, so what's the rate guarantees? In the early days of long-term care was like the Wild West. There's some policies out there that were unlimited benefits or $1 million benefit. Well, they didn't do the actuarial tables very well, so they've had multiple rate increases. We've designed our product where we've kind of capped our liability. Say, well, how much do you want us to pay a month and for how long? Okay, well, here's what it costs. That's the minimum it's going to last. If you get a better deal, then it'll just last longer. We're not going to take your money, but at least we know what our liability is. And we have a pretty good dividend paying history. That's well documented out there for 167 consecutive years. How are we able to do that? Well, we're not a stock company, we're a mutual company. And so all of our profits go back to policyholders, not shareholders. And we don't care about the next quarterly report because we have a long 30-year time horizon. So if you're shopping companies, look for mutual companies rather than stock companies. Okay. So the MyCare plan is kind of like a bronze, silver, gold, platinum. There's other ones out there. It's kind of like our early days of medical insurance. You want the bronze, silver, gold, platinum plan. You can see there's a coverage pool of money at the bottom there. Those dividends start in the third year, but they're smaller, right? So, and then here's the asset flex. You can see it's at its core is the premium that funds it. You get a life insurance benefit and you get a really nice long-term care benefit. So that's for a 55-year-old female. Okay, so this alludes to your question, Dara. Things to keep in mind. You must be underwritten. Can't stress that enough. Get through underwriting while you have the most valuable asset at your disposal, your health and your age. It can change at any time. So, lock that in when it makes sense for you. Here's some statistics on approval rates. So age 50, less than 50, 80%. That still means 20%. That's a 1 in 5 chance you might not get it. 50 to 60, 78%. So not a huge drop. Get over 70, now it's 70%. Get over 60, it's 70. Over 70, it's half the time people are not getting approved. So nice segue there. Yeah, I think I did a pretty good job of covering that. obviously. And that's just not us, that's any insurance company out there. I have people that have been talking to me about life insurance that are in their 70s and go, why is it so expensive? I go, well, like you and me, I'm closer to the end than I am the beginning. I'm not a good risk. Again, risk management. So, here's some satisfied customers who said, man, I'm glad I had something in place. What's the best plan to have? Well, the one you have in place when you need it, regardless of what it is or the size of it, you have some kind of plan in place. That's going to be a good plan. The duration. So when you're designing your plan, how long should I design my plan for? I usually say 3 years because that's a nice middle of the road. Of course, some are like any statistics, some are going to be less, some are going to be more. You can see that, men again are leading the way. We're only doing 2.2 versus 3.7 for women. One of our plans, and there's very few that offer this, you can actually design it to have a third pool of money. So rather than getting 2 jumbo plans, and one might not need it, you get 2 medium plans plus a third pool of money that either of you could draw from. Maybe that's a strategy. Okay, so how did you guys do on your who, where, how solution? I hope you've written something down that you can use as your basis for having folks over for a barbecue this spring and have a little family discussion about long-term care. I know it's not something we talk about at cocktail parties, but again, you want to have that conversation before you need it. You want to avoid crisis management. You want to have project management. Because peace of mind, how do you put a price on that? What's that?
No, go ahead. You're at the last slide. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. All right. So living a long life is a probability. In fact, it's more so than it was when they developed Social Security. People died at 62 and they were eligible for Social Security at 65. And they had that figured out. Times have changed. Now people retire in their 60s somewhere and they live into their 80s, 90s and beyond. But don't use the government plan, create your own plan or give up your choice, your options, your control. Okay, so here's some nice resources. If you want to write these down, or I guess they'll be on the website.
Mm-hmm.
So, AARP is a really good resource. There's our cost of care tool. If you want to go see what it costs wherever you think you're going to retire. Then, of course, the government has a website. Of course they do. And then there's always the good old NewYorkLife.com. So those are all good resources. And they're free. And blah, 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 blah. My purpose today was not to provide a sales presentation. My purpose today was to provide education. What is long-term care? What's an ADL? What does Medicare and Medicaid cover or not cover? Who's my who person? Where do I want care? Where can I have care? What kind of resources do I have that could potentially pay for long-term care, and which one do I want to spend down first? And then talk to a financial professional and start asking good questions and see what a plan looks like for you. And watch out for the taxes on long-term care insurance sometime in our futures.
Thank you, Don, very much for sharing this information with us, making it possible for us to share it with the community. All attendees will receive an email inviting you to attend, inviting you to our mailing list. We do only send you the invitation you need to confirm it to be added to our mailing list. We hope you found today informative. If you're not already on a mailing list, please look for that in the next couple of days and confirm your subscription. And if, as always, check your junk folder, since it does come from an email web server. And then just a brief update on classes that are coming up. We have one more class in our winter series with Living Well with Diabetes or Chronic Pain, which is with the Area Agency on Aging to help us understand the programs that are available to learn about living well with diabetes or chronic pain that they offer. And then you see here for the first time the full list of classes for our spring series. So you will start seeing announcements for these classes, and they are available for sign up on our website. So we hope to see you again at future sessions. And thank you for joining us today.